Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Mark Doxy, Ranty Flat Earth and Sleeping Warrior. How are you all doing?
Hello, gentlemen.
Hola.
Hey,
Ranty's making a brew.
Oh, has he gone for a cup of tea? Fair enough.
Coffee.
Well,
Nobody drinks tea in England, Nathan. Come on, it's coffee.
Coffee? Fair enough. Thought we were a nation of tea drinkers.
It's such a stereotype, Nathan. So 1990s.
Oh, I do apologise. Let's do some housekeeping then. If Ranty joins halfway through, that's fine. So, any signs of curvature, gentlemen?
Nope.
No.
What about axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No.
Zero.
Self-perpetuating molten iron core? Any signs of that?
None whatsoever. I do have a better video to show in a bit, but no, we don't have any of that either, no.
Got a video on the self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of presupposed radius-based Earth?
Yeah.
No.
Really?
You know, like, somebody came in the other day, I can't remember which bozo it was, but somebody came in and tried to argue that, I can't even remember what it was. I presented a video on the Curie point of iron and how it loses its permanent magnetic state, but only gets an induced magnetism if there's a source. And obviously on their model there isn't one. And basically, Nathan, you stamped all over it and said that it wasn't acceptable because you couldn't tell that the temperature was indeed above the Curie point. So I thought, right, I'll go and see if I can find one that actually does show this then. So I've gone and found one, and I'm going to present it in a bit, and I'm going to show you. You cannot argue that it's above the Curie point. So, look, we'll have some better evidence this time round, and you'll accept it.
Well, if you were just presenting it to me, I might very well have gone, yeah, that makes a good point, and not given it too much thought. But when you're in the middle of a debate with somebody who's saying contrary to that, and you think about what they say, and you think, well, no, that's a fair point, I can't just let it slide. That would be unreasonable.
I know, but I feel as though you're bullying me because I'm...
Oh, here we go. Every time somebody's hard done by or loses an argument, they tell me that I'm bullying them.
Everybody's a victim, Nathan.
Everyone
a victim.
is a victim, and it just gets on my nerves. Don't claim you're being bullied just because you're losing. Not you, but anybody.
I'm back.
Don't claim you've got a speech impediment when you're just going, because that's not a speech impediment neither.
No, I agree. Right. What about a pressurized system next to a vacuum? Any signs of that?
No.
Not at all.
Mentioned it already, but radius? R?
No.
Seriously? No scientific evidence of gravity?
No, they all believe it. But when it comes push to shove, they can't produce any evidence to support it, and they expect us to believe things like pictures from space, Himawari, NASA.
And gravity? What about gravity?
What about it? Oh,
any scientific evidence of that?
No, they can't contrast it or distinguish it against density. That which we call density is essentially what they call gravity, and they can't show it otherwise.
So Was asks from the chat, does a pressurized system next to a vacuum need a solid lid or what? Pressure needs to press on something, Was.
It needs a book.
Well, if we were to believe the guest from yesterday, we believe that the Earth is the lid, apparently.
Right.
And books are gas.
And you can push it one step further and say that a vacuum cannot exist in the natural world unless you artificially create it. And to artificially create a vacuum, you need walls, you need roof, or ceiling, you need floor. So if you're going to make a vacuum, then it has to have some containment. Otherwise, it doesn't become a vacuum. And so it works both ways. It's not just the walls of a container for a pressure. It's also the walls of a container for the vacuum that you claim is up there.
Yes, but in essence, as soon as you say gas pressure, you've got to have something for it to press on. So, that for me is the end of the argument. Regardless of what my thoughts are about up there, I haven't been there, I haven't studied there, but there is a standard rhetoric for what's up there, and the medium itself is preposterous. But yet guys like Woz will say, oh, there's a picture from there though. It's like, yeah, but we've debunked the medium it sits in. So, credit to John. He's the one who gave me this information and made it cement in my mind why it was non-logical. Where, don't get me wrong, it's always been non-logical. It is a non-logical thing to say that you've got a vacuum next to gas pressure. It's ludicrous. But like most people, you're stuck in cognitive dissonance when you are presented this information. You are told various things on Wikipedia, like there is a pressure gradient, therefore that all makes sense, just take our word for it. And most people will just read it, accept it, and move on. They don't know, they've not been there, it doesn't make sense, but so what? That's what they say is real, so it must be true.
Nathan, is that the last one on housekeeping?
Yeah, we covered gravity, covered our self-perpetuating molten iron core, pressurized system next to a vacuum.
What about energies?
Curvature,
hang on.
axial rotation, everything. Yeah, that's it.
We need to add one.
Molten iron core?
Yeah, we did that. Anthony's got something to add on that, because just to fill you in, Ranty, Anthony's saying he was bullied by me when I said I didn't accept that everything in that bolt was above the Curie temperature because you couldn't tell. But Anthony's saying that that's me bullying him, apparently.
No, but we need to add one to it. We need to add housekeeping 1 point to it for the next week at least. Is there any signs of Ben Miller? The bloke that George Nathan claims that he was referring to.
Who the hell is Ben Miller?
Where he's put BM and then signed it off as GH himself. I mean, I didn't know about that until much after it happened because I was travelling. But ultimately, when Nathan told me about it, I said, "What's the gist of it?" And he said, "He claims BM wasn't Brian Mullin." And I was like, "Right, so who is it then?" And it turns out that it's a guy called Ben Miller, or Bill. Where this guy is, Bill Miller must be a unicorn, and I mean, to try and track this guy down, right? Let's bear in mind
hold
the
on.
fact,
You can't track him down because obviously, like Brian Mullen, he just coincidentally has the exact same set of circumstances around him, which is that he's incommunicado, man. I mean, you're never going to be able to track this guy down. So let's face it, Anthony, you're going to fail finding Ben Miller.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. How did he even know about this guy Ben Miller? Well, we've never even heard of him. How did he know about his backstory and the fact that he'd done one from Flat Earth and gone to the ball?
Haven't you heard of that famous Flat Earther, Mr. Miller? Surely you must have heard of him, right? I mean, if George knows about him, I mean, we're just not looking in the right places. We haven't gone through 3 million comments to double check who this guy is, so it's really our fault. We're just stupid and lack critical thinking skills. That's the problem here.
Maybe he goes through the alphabet and he literally trolls and grasses up everybody to their workplaces, and then he'll start with AA, AB, AC, and he's got a whole list of them. Maybe he's been doing this for years.
Could be. The whole thing's an absolute joke. I mean, when a liar's caught out in a lie, they're never going to just confess that, yeah, okay, I lied. I said I contacted Brian Miller and I hadn't. He's just going to go back and do exactly what he did. Edit a comment, insert some random stranger that you can't then contact, because just coincidentally, at the same time we're all criticising him about Brian Mullen, he happens to know someone with the exact same initials who we can't now contact because he's incommunicado. Just like Brian Mullen. It's really weird. Funny coincidence. Yeah. Bit like the sun and moon being the same size.
The worst thing about it was that when he claims that he posted this on multiple threads on his comments so that it was seen with maximum exposure, aside from the fact that he did this 3 days later, obviously when the shit started hitting the fan, he realised he needed to do some damage limitation here, and that was the correction. But ultimately, 3 days later, he'd put these on all these different threads, and even if it was true that he'd cited this Ben Miller from the first instance, all the other threads that he'd copied and pasted this link to would have no idea of the existence of the one where the name was mentioned. Everybody's going to be confused, and that's assuming that it was legit in the first place. So I mean, if you can't see that this guy's literally lying through his teeth, I mean, I don't know how blatant you need it to be. He put the comments on 3 days after, claimed it was over multiple threads. And if it was over multiple threads, none of them would have understood what the hell BM meant if it was in a different context. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, you catch a liar, they just lie. They just lie more. That's all they ever do. Just web gets bigger. That's all that ever happens. But we've reached the point where it's now gone beyond the point of absurdity. Let's just move on. The guy's obviously a blatant liar. It's obvious to everyone watching, even on his own side. So, you know, we don't need to push it any further as far as I'm concerned. When he weaves the web so thinly, you just go, God, this is beyond a joke.
But to be fair to the man, he has done an apology video. It was only like a minute long or 2 minutes long, where he admits and he accepts that he owes all of the Flat Earth community an apology. So he set up this gracious number where you can donate to the Wildlife Fund or donate to the Benevolent Fund for Brian Mullen. And I mean, I accept this sincere apology. I mean, the guy, he knows he was wrong and he's apologised for it. So let's all give him a group hug.
Fair enough. I don't want to touch the man or be anywhere near him, so I'm not going to touch him to hug him. But yeah.
Although I did actually check out the number that he provided. I didn't ring it, but I googled it. It essentially is, if I'm allowed to say this.
Yes, you are.
Shit. Eat shit.
Yes, alphanumeric coding for eat shit. 1-800 eat shit.
Yeah. So that's
the amount of respect he's got. I mean, he said it on one of the videos that I think was about me, or maybe the one that was after the one about me, where he basically says he's got absolutely no respect for us. He sees us as, you know, inferior.
I wonder how his bosses would think about him behaving like this.
Who cares? We're not going to sink to that sort of level. Well, certainly I'm not. I've got no interest in, you know, I've less than no interest in contacting George Netanyahu's boss, or anybody else's boss for that matter. It's ludicrous, but that's the kind of tactics the Globers employ. Well, that's good for the Globers, I suppose. Obviously, they've got to do that sort of thing, what with it being the standard rhetoric that half the face of the plane thinks is the case. So, yeah, you've got to do those sorts of underhanded tricks when it's the standard narrative. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we
can I just add on a more serious note, of course, that even if, I mean, I can't remember what the issue was. I don't know what the issue was that Brian was so-called wrong about. But even if he was wrong about bringing anybody's employer and try and like stir the pot, just because in your opinion he was wrong, it's ridiculous. So make sure you go over to my channel, check my most recent video. I'll give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you didn't like it, and make sure you put a comment on there telling me what you think about it, because people need to see that this guy's a moron. It's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed on his behalf, to be honest.
Well, that's the point. Once it gets to the point where the web of lies is thin and weak and laughable, then that's the point that you can move on. If anybody doesn't recognise that George Netanyahu is a lying sack of garbage, then, you know, there's no hope for you, because it's obvious. But, you know, fine, if you want to believe his very thin web of lies and defend him, it's like, okay, fine. You know, I also poked Jesse Kozlowski on account of the fact that, according to George Netanyahu, anybody who fell for his experiment clearly doesn't have the slightest idea about what an experiment actually is. But nevertheless, his phrasing was that he was actually doing an experiment, and Jesse Kozlowski fell for it. So if you believe George's narrative, then Jesse Kozlowski, you shouldn't be watching him, because according to George, he's got no critical thinking skills and fell for his little experiment that he was performing. So yeah, well done, the genius known as Jesse Kozlowski, because you either were duped by a man lying about having contacted Brian Mullen, which is your first assumption because you lack critical thinking skills according to George, or you were taking part in George's little experiment, and again, you just didn't spot it, you were too stupid and thought it was someone else anyway because you lacked the critical thinking skills to go through a million comments and find that it was actually a cut and paste comment from a different thread about a different person that was edited several days later. So if you're too stupid to recognise that, Jesse, then clearly George is right about you. You lack critical thinking skills.
Yeah, so I was on TFR this morning. Tried to get you on, Nath, but you was out and about.
Yeah, I was with my kid doing the gym. I was really gutted when I got back and saw the message, because I'd have definitely said yes, but I just wasn't here to say yes or see the message. But yeah, how did you get on?
It was good. They had me on for second, third and fourth section, so an hour and a half.
They being Iron Realm Media?
Yeah, Iron Realm Media, yeah. I think they had around about 3,000 listeners, so it was quite interesting. I plugged you quite a lot.
Oh, thank you
Might
very
get
much.
some listeners in from the US.
What did you talk about? Anything specific?
Yeah, well, they wanted to get me on because they were, they were more than happy about the response that had happened with the P1000
Hey, Chris.
campaign.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
hello.
Off
3,
mic.
2. Is he all right?
Don't know. I didn't hear anything from him. Anyway, sorry. You carry on. How you were getting on talking about what? Sorry.
Yeah, about the P1000 thing that I did this week. So
Oh, the Rantiathon.
the Rantiathon and the GoFundMe, yeah. So they were quite staggered that it had been achieved within 24 hours, and they wanted me to bring me on and basically talk about how it had transpired and etc. And the people that responded to it.
Hey, Jimmy.
Hello.
Hello. Good to have you.
So yeah, it was interesting. We got talking about a few other different things like no fuel in planes, etc. You ever heard of that one, Nate?
Yeah, I've not looked into it. Those sorts of things kind of, they reek of no forests on flat Earth and the like. And I just think to myself, if I get involved with it, I'll end up just getting banned from several live stream chats where they're talking about it and buying into it. And without having done any research, I'm not prepared to comment. When in the past I have, I end up annoyed. So it's just like, I just want to keep away from stuff like that. If it turns out to be true, then great.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like I say, they were dead interested in the story. It would have been nice if you'd been there because you were doing a lot of the work in the chat to get people to donate as well, which was really good. It would have been nice to hear your side of the story too.
Well, there's not much to say. I was just, obviously it was my suggestion in the first place to do the Rantiathon, and I said if you can be good enough to keep the images rolling and show people what you've been doing, because it's fast and you've got a lot to show, I'll, gem people along in the chat and tell them when people have donated, which is what a thon is. It doesn't matter what kind of telethon, marathon, whatever. If you're trying to get people to donate to a cause, then it needs not just the actual quote unquote entertainment, which is yourself showing all your images and your flat earth proofs and all that sort of stuff. You also need somebody saying, this person just donated, thank you very much for your contribution. Things like that, keeping a running total of how much was donated, which is all I really did. And got excited because it was exciting. I'm not going to lie, I really enjoyed it, if I'm honest. There's people in the chat and they're all, guessing what the next total amount will be that we reach. Hello again, Jimmy. Have you sorted yourself out?
Hi Nathan, sorry about that. I didn't have a page open that was causing noise. Do apologise.
No worries. So yeah, it was an exciting Rantiathon, and then, like you say, within a day, people had supported you because they can see that you've done the work already. They know that you're out there doing it. Hey, Jose.
Hello, good morning. Somebody need to open a Find Me campaign for Ben Miller. Go find me, Ben Miller. Thank you.
Go find me. He's incommunicado. It's going to be very difficult to get hold of him, I fear.
Yeah, I've been looking for that guy. I don't know. I mean, I went backtracking for the first flat earthers and the missing ones from Tiger Dan and all them people. I haven't found Ben Miller yet.
Bummer. Well,
It's like that unicorn.
Go on, Anthony.
It's like that unicorn fart, isn't it? Looking for Ben Miller's going to be like looking for the unicorn fart, for the unicorn that doesn't even exist.
Yes, indeed. A unicorn fart in a jacuzzi. That's how hard it'll be to find.
Nice. So let me have this this minute whilst it's a bit quiet. Let me present this iron Curie temperature point.
Yeah, you're up.
Let me know when we're good.
Yeah, you're all good.
Right. So the claim by the ball earthers is that we live on a sphere, right? Molten iron core, mainly made of iron, bit of nickel, probably a bit of other pollutants as well. But essentially, the argument is that there is a molten iron core, and it's claimed it's around about 10,000 degrees. And if it's iron and it's in its molten state, the iron is, well, it's not capable of producing its own magnetism anymore because it's non-magnetic, because it's above the Curie point. Now, not only is it above the Curie point, it's above it's what's the other word? I can't remember what the word. It's above its not its melting point. It's what's the one that's above the melting point that goes when it goes supercritical? I can't remember. Evaporation. It goes above its evaporation point as well. It becomes supercritical. But even at this low temperature that this gent's got this blowtorch. His name's Walter Lewin from MIT, instantly credible. And what he's doing is he's heating up a nut that's suspended on a steel string, and he's got a magnet that's right next to it. And what he shows is that as he's heating up the nut, the nut is currently stuck against the magnet because the nut is magnetic whilst it's cold. But once he warms it up and it starts to glow cherry red, you'll see that it pulls away. It falls away from the magnet. But it doesn't fall away and remain at rest. It falls away and starts to swing abnormally towards the magnet because it will conduct magnetism, but it requires an independent source. So basically, as the temperature rises and rises and rises, it starts to glow red. On this video, in contrast to the other video, he keeps the heat on the nut when it pulls away, basically to show you that the temperature is exceeded and it cannot go any lower because he's applying more and more heat to it. So as it gets cherry red, now it pulls away. And as you can see, it's swinging towards the magnet, but it's not sticking to the magnet. So it's got much less magnetism from before, but you can tell that the Curie point has been achieved. And at this point, he's still applying the temperature to it. So if we have a molten iron core and it's supposed to be iron, then the fact that it's above the Curie point, which is only about 750 degrees, it's not that hot compared to the 10,000 that they claim it is. I think it's 7,000. But it's above the Curie point. It cannot hold its own magnetic charge anymore. And on their model, there is no induced magnetism from an external source, like what's being demonstrated on this video. On their model, that's claimed that it's the dynamo theory, which is the movement of the stuff. Yeah, watch. As he removes the heat away, it starts to cool down. And you can see that the effect of the magnetism is getting greater, 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 greater. And now it's back into being a magnetic state. That's because the Curie temperature has dropped. So that means one of two things is the only possibility if we have a molten iron core. Either there is an induced magnetic source which is providing the magnetism for the molten iron, or it self-perpetuates somehow. And iron does not have the property of self-perpetuation. It will not self-perpetuate because, and we know this because there is no evidence that iron in its molten state can create its own charge by movement all by itself. There is no self-perpetual properties to iron. Yet these idiots all believe that there is. But this video proves by Walter Lewin that it's either inducted magnetism or, well, it has to self-perpetuate somehow. And there is no induced magnetism, so it has to be molten self-perpetuation, and iron doesn't do it. So where's the evidence for a molten iron core? And of course there is none. And if you're going to make the claim that there's a molten iron core but produce zero evidence for it, then that means, well, it can be dismissed without evidence. But on this occasion, we do have evidence that shows that your arguments are fallacious anyway. So it requires specific evidence to prove that iron in its molten state self-perpetuates, and there is none. So that's the end of that one.
Thank you very much.
Where did this garbage of what the center of the Earth is made of? A few hundred years, or is it been longer than that?
I just want to respond to Two-Dimensional Delusion, who says, comparing a nut to Earth's core, LOL. Well, that's just, what can I say? If you didn't get the presentation, then you shouldn't really be in this debate.
Hello. Hello.
It was spelled out for you as simple as possible.
Is that really Arwen?
Yeah, it is me.
Yeah, if I remember rightly, we've been taught, is it that Mars lost its atmosphere due to the fact that its molten iron core stopped? Yeah? And that the solar winds blew the atmosphere away.
What a load of nonsense.
Yeah. So in their model, clearly it's our self-perpetuating molten iron core that protects our atmosphere from the vacuum of space.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
On that
That
spinning,
sounds very
flying
50s
ball.
science fiction.
Just nonsense.
It is.
But if you follow scientism, it's compulsory to believe it.
Indeed.
Like Jimmy would. What about you, Jimmy? Do you believe that?
Definitely.
You do?
I don't know enough about the subject to make a reasonable response to that.
But if the sentence says scientists now believe, do you follow that?
I'm saying I don't know enough about the subject to make a reasonable response to that. You're an expert in the subject?
Well, if ever I see a paragraph that starts off with scientists no longer believe, I realize that scientism is a real religion. And I think you're a follower of that religion.
Not really. I dropped science in GCSE.
And yet you came on this week to talk to us about what, navigation, and about what else do you talk about? That
It's more the comprehension of what the issue was presented in that one, but yeah.
you follow science and you think you're an expert because you think that's a dependable reference point.
I've just said I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert at all. Where are we getting these accusations from?
Jimmy, you were on yesterday, weren't you?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
I recognised the voice from yesterday, and I wasn't on yesterday myself, but I wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind.
If I can answer it, I'll help you out.
You were talking about how Nathan was asking you about what PSI meant and how did it apply, and Nathan was pushing the point that there needs to be like the walls of a container for there to be a pressure, and you were like, well, gravity explains it. And what I wanted to ask you was, if space is a vacuum, the way they tell us, then that creates a differential between space and the air that we are in, right? And the higher you go, the less that differential becomes the gap between where we are. As you go higher and higher, it gradually gets less and less and less according to your model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without having, if I asked you to make a vacuum, how would you actually make a vacuum? Like, for instance, if I asked you to make a vacuum in your room, whatever room you're in now, how would you do it?
What, with a container, you mean?
Yeah, you'd have to have a container, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Would you be able to make a container in your room without... Sorry, would you be able to make a vacuum in your room without a container?
No.
So if you did it at the top of Everest and you made a vacuum in a container, would you be able to make a vacuum without a container at the top of Everest?
No.
So if you stuck up of Everest, so you're now up to like 70,000 feet, the height Concorde flew at.
Yeah.
A vacuum without a container at double the height of it.
No.
What makes you think that you're anywhere without a container?
Because the atmosphere is so thin out there. How big is the atmosphere of the Earth? Yeah.
How big is what?
How far away is the edge of the atmosphere of the Earth?
As far as you want to go. You can go as far as you want. If you were to make a vacuum, you would need a container to make the vacuum. Correct?
Yeah, but that's the containers to stop the pressure of the atmosphere.
Right. So as the pressure gets less and less and less,
Yeah.
if I was to ask you to make a vacuum, higher and higher and higher you go, eventually your position would be, well, you would be in a vacuum, so you wouldn't need to make it, right?
You could have a container that's thinner and thinner and thinner, so you don't actually need a container.
Right. So if that's the case, then how do you have the vacuum existing next to the pressurized bit that's not the vacuum without a container, without a membrane?
I think maybe you should look into it, Anthony. I'll explain it several times to you.
No, I understand the explanation.
He wasn't here. Just explain it again.
The walls of the container to have the vacuum.
Sorry, Anthony, I didn't hear that. Sorry.
You need the walls of the container to have the vacuum, because otherwise you haven't got.
Higher and higher, the walls of the container could be thinner and thinner until you get to the point where you don't actually need a container.
Right. But then when you come down a little bit towards the earth,
sorry, I've got to interrupt, Anthony. Hold on. I don't understand a container that gets thinner and thinner and thinner. Explain that to me, please.
Because the atmospheric pressure gets less.
No. Start the sentence with the container gets thinner and thinner and thinner because
the atmospheric pressure.
No, you have just asserted that the container gets thinner and thinner. Now you're talking about the atmosphere within the supposed container without a lid getting thinner. So don't piss me around. Tell me about the walls getting thinner, dumbass.
Well, you need a certain pressurization of a container, and as you get higher and higher, you need less and less.
You're just saying the same thing. Explain that to me. You can't just assert what you've already asserted and I've asked for an explanation for as an explanation. Reasserting it isn't an explanation. Tell me how the walls of the container get thinner and thinner and then disappear. That makes no sense. How can a physical solid thing get thinner and how can it disappear to nothing and still contain something? I don't understand your nonsense. Please explain it. Not the gas pressure getting thinner, the container.
Okay, well, you have a container that's like a tanker, as in a tankard, sorry, on the base of the foot of the earth, and as you get higher, you use a thinner glass, for example.
Sorry, I've never seen a container have the glass of the container get thinner as I raise it in altitude. It still makes no sense.
You need a wine glass, then.
Sorry, I've never seen a wine glass go higher and get thinner.
I'm not talking about the glass getting thinner.
We are talking about a container getting thinner. That is your assertion. As you get higher, the walls of the container get thinner and then you don't need them anymore. So I want you to explain. So far we've had a tanker. I've never seen a tanker dissolve before my eyes with altitude, and I've never seen a glass dissolve before my eyes and get thinner. This is nonsense.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, what are you saying, you complete retard?
Anthony, do you understand what I'm saying?
Don't talk to Anthony. I have pointed out that you have asserted you have a wall getting thinner. It's nonsense. Don't talk to Anthony. Explain. Don't talk over me. Explain the walls getting thinner. It makes no sense.
No, but that's your comprehension of what I've just said.
What, walls getting thinner? I can't comprehend a wall, a solid physical thing, getting thinner. It doesn't make any sense. That's not a comprehension problem. That's an explanation problem. So explain it.
I'd say you'd use a thinner container as you get higher.
So we have multiple containers of differing densities in the atmosphere. I don't see any of that. What are you talking about? What thinner container? Where's the medium-sized container? What are you talking about? I don't see any container in the atmosphere. What are you on about?
You actually go back to what Anthony was asking at the start.
Tell me about the walls getting thinner. That's what you've asserted. Either rescind what you have said and said, I'm a dumbass. I assert that solid physical objects get thinner with altitude because I'm a Mongol. Or I'll keep shouting at you till you do. Or explain it.
I've explained it. I'll explain it again.
You haven't explained it. Explain how a solid physical wall gets thinner with altitude.
I never said that.
You said the wall of the container gets thinner as you go up. Those were your exact words.
No, they weren't.
What do you mean, no? You said the wall of the container gets thinner with altitude till you don't need it. It's so thin you don't need the walls of the container. That's what you said.
No, I said I'd use a thinner container. This is your
You'd use a thinner container. You would use a thinner container, would you? You're not using anything. We're talking about a pressurized system next to a vacuum. What you use is irrelevant. We're talking about your bullshit religion and how it has gas pressure next to a vacuum. You've said there's a wall that gets thinner as you go up. That's what you've asserted. That's what you have asserted. The container gets thinner as you rise up until you don't need it anymore. Specifically, the container. That is what you asserted, and we will go round and round in circles while you deny it if you choose. But I know what you said. You said the container gets thinner with altitude. It's nonsense. You're either going to concede it.
Nathan, you're wrong. You really are wrong. I think
You did say that. You did say that. You might not have meant that, but that is what you literally said.
You'd use a different container as you go higher up.
So you didn't say a different container. You said the container gets thinner. You used the word thinner. Don't laugh at me, you pathetic little twat.
Not very nice, Nathan.
Yet you are pathetic. And I will tear you a new one for your complete blibbering nonsense that you've just spouted. You've said a container, and you've said it gets thinner. I've asked you to explain that, and you've said I've got a comprehension problem. I do not have a comprehension problem. You are an idiot, and you assert nonsense. So either take back your nonsense and concede that what you have said is indeed nonsense, or back it up.
Okay. Anthony.
Not Anthony. My name is Nathan. You will start your sentence with, the walls of this container that I assert that get thinner thusly. Tell me how they get thinner as you have asserted it.
I said...
Don't tell me what you've said. I am not deaf. Explain how the walls of your containerless container get thinner.
This is ridiculous, mate. I didn't say that.
Yes, you did. Now you're just a liar. Like you said you had operated a P900 and navigated ships. That's what you are. An outright liar and an idiot.
No, I said I'd use a thinner container as you get higher up to the point that you don't actually need a container.
You would use... You don't do anything. You are a mere mortal, my friend. You don't do anything. We're talking about the bullshit of your religion. Not what you would do, Dumbo.
Okay.
Explain how we have pressure next to a vacuum.
I've explained it several times.
You haven't explained anything, Dinbat. You've explained literally nothing.
I don't know where you want me to go with this, Nathan.
I want an explanation for a pressurised system next to a vacuum. How many times have I got to say it? That's the question on the table. That is the question from yesterday. It is the question.
You need a container.
Yeah, you need a container. Yeah, we finally get there where the retard on the panel accepts that you need a bloody container.
Nathan, you asked me to explain something, and I'm trying to explain it, and you keep talking over me.
Yeah, we need a container, and we're asking why your containerless system works, and you're not giving us an answer. You're telling that you would take different thinnesses of container up. You're babbling nonsense, man.
I'm not. I'm trying to talk, but you won't let me talk, Nathan.
I don't want you to talk for another hour. We've already had this conversation yesterday. You have no value here. You didn't know what entropy was. You're an idiot.
Some homework.
Anthony bought it.
You're an idiot. I don't need to give people like you homework. The fact that you referred to it as homework also demonstrates just how stupid you are.
Didn't he have homework, Nathan?
I did it.
Did you?
Yeah.
What is it?
It was finding out what this phrase means.
What phrase?
Entropy or something like that.
Can you spell it?
Can you spell it?
That was your homework.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe
I didn't pass my homework.
How'd you spell it then?
It probably begins with an E, I reckon.
So you're telling me you've done this homework, but you don't know how to spell it? You don't know how to spell it, but you've gone and researched it. So what was your understanding of entropy?
You were the kid that was constantly high in class, weren't you?
Not really, no.
So you just skipped school all the time?
No, I never actually missed a day.
Right.
Never missed a day.
Mentally, that's obvious.
Apart from illness and stuff like that, obviously.
All right.
You did miss a day then. So you just lied.
Yeah, just another lie. Just like he's operated a P900 and he can explain how a pressurised system next to a vacuum works because he's told us on multiple occasions. And now he's never missed a day of school, except when he's missed a day of school. Just a liar.
Illness, sorry, I should have...
Yeah, you shouldn't have said you never missed a day because that was an outright lie.
Say again, sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, saying that you never missed a day, that sentence was an outright lie you had. And then you corrected your lie.
Okay.
Yeah, you're a liar. That's what we're pointing out here. You haven't explained how a pressurised system works next to a vacuum, yet you continually say, I've already explained it. If I'd have explained something, I'd just explain it again. And I do, with you, on multiple times. Just keep explaining it to you, yeah? But you keep telling us that you've just explained it. Not actually explain anything, just tell us that you've already done it.
We had a whole hour yesterday about it.
So tell us again, just summarise your detailed explanation from the hour yesterday we spent telling you about how your system doesn't work. Just summarise how it does.
I don't want to.
Then sod off. Right, get off my panel, Jimmy. You are a complete waste of my time. Don't come back. You're a pathetic thicko. I don't want you back on the panel, Jimmy. Don't come back. You're not welcome. Just a waste of time. Come back when you've got a decent argument. Come back when you can string a sentence together. Come back when you understand what entropy is. Come back when you understand that a less pressurised system would flow from a more pressurised system. It's simple.
Nate, just put my screen on, please, if you would.
Apparently, Mark Taylor says that the globe model doesn't incorporate a vacuum next to a pressurized system, and there is no reference that says that that is part of their model.
Yep, I told you this yesterday. I told you this. They can't model it out.
So Earth is has so much gas that it can fill the entire universe in infinite layers from the Earth outwards. Is that what they're saying?
They just don't like to talk about it. That's basically it. Because they can't make that work in any scenario. This is what I've been trying to explain. It doesn't even work theoretically, no matter what they do, no matter what they try, unless the scientists and people basically decide, okay, yeah, we were wrong about the vacuum of space. It's basically all air. That's the only thing that can save them. That's a big switch.
No, they just tell people about pressure gradients. Nah, they rely on people like Jimmy's stupidity, and they tell them about pressure gradients. Don't give them an explanation at all. And then people like Jimmy just accept it. Well, of course there's a vacuum of space. We've got photographs from space. Well, what about the medium itself? How does it exist next to a pressurised system? Oh, well, we've got pressure gradients. Yeah, that doesn't explain how you've got a vacuum next to those pressure gradients, though, does it? Yeah, it does. Wiki says so.
So they just choose to ignore it.
Yeah.
And we're asking them, how can it be? That is the point.
Oh,
Mark Taylor, you're too dumb to understand it.
How much of the panel have we lost?
None.
None.
Fair enough. Quick enough on the mouse.
I'll stay on the back panel.
Yeah, I wasn't going to have that conversation again if anyone moans at me for kicking Jimmy out. I asked him a direct question.
No, thank you. Thank you.
I was really
trying to hold back complaining about it.
I asked him to summarise his points that he claims he's made yesterday, and he said he didn't want to. At that point, he is literally just wasting our time.
The whole wiki explanation, I'll just call it, what he read from some website, what it all comes down to is that they falsely claim that gravity basically causes the pressure. It's a complete switcheroo in your face, because that's not how it works. Absolutely not.
Yeah, like I say, they rely on people like the people who are looking at it and citing it as being idiots and not actually reading and understanding what they have read. In other words, lacking critical thinking, not reading it and going, does this actually explain what is happening? And the answer is no, it does not. It's word salad.
How do you call this the burden of proof reversal when a globe believer asks a flat earther to show them the pressure, the vacuum next to a pressurized system?
That's the correct term.
Why are you asking us that, right?
That's called the burden of proof reversal. Yeah, it's another logical fallacy. There's a few people in the chat doing it now saying, show us the lid. It's like, we don't assert or claim to have been in space, so why would we need to prove anything? I've not been up there. I don't tell the world that the satellite's going around sphere Earth in a vacuum. That isn't my assertion. I don't have to make any claim in that regard. These guys say, well, I'm not a scientist. It's like, well, no, I can say that because I'm not making any claims about it. But you are. You claim there's a vacuum of space next to a pressurized system. That's the whole medium of space, as you know it. Yeah, the final frontier and all that sci-fi nonsense. That's what vacuum of space means to most people. Now, it doesn't work, it makes no sense, and when you ask them to explain it, they tell you that you've got pressure gradients on Earth. And go, well, yeah, pressure needs something to press on though, doesn't it? Oh, no, you can just fade to nothing, and then you can have this extremely low pressure system next to it without a problem. Why? Well, I don't know, but I'm not a scientist, and I'm just prepared to accept it. It's like, well, then you're a dogmatic idiot.
No, I'm not.
Hey, Travis.
Morning.
My model
The
necessitates
guy
a lid,
basically
says
already
Milo.
explained that he
What model,
believes-
Milo? What model? What's he talking about? Why is Milo claiming we have a model now? So he's just creating a straw man. Reversal of proof and straw man in one short sentence from Milo Lugo. Wow, amazing how many fallacies they can cram into about 5 words.
Your model necessitates a lid.
We don't have a model. The current model is globe, moron. That's what's asserted. That's what's shown on the TV. That's what's talked about in the news. Global problems, my friend. Yeah? That's what the model is. Models are only in existence because of the globe. Otherwise, we just have the world that we walk around on, which is obviously and observably flat. That's what we have. We see buildings that you claim aren't there because of your model. So models don't get you anywhere. They just cause you problems when we put them apart and point out that they have absolutely zero scientific validity whatsoever. Show me a scientific model. Show me something that's had all of the hypotheses validated. That's not going to happen.
I have a model though, but
great.
yeah, it's not scientific.
No.
Yeah, I mean, my theory is let's break the ball first, and then we can figure out where we live. That's it. Break the ball. Then
It says, when you say pressurized system needs a container, you're describing your model as needing a lid. No, Milo. We definitely have a pressurized system. I'm breathing it. I don't need to prove... It's like the buildings that we just see. Yeah? When we have an intellectually honest person and we say, what explanation do I need to give for that building we just see? He answers, none. No explanation required. Why do we have gas pressure? I don't care. I'm not making any assertions about the very air that I breathe in. You are, Milo, because you're a religious zealot. You have a belief that you've got no lid and a vacuum. Me, I just breathe the air, no explanation required. I'm not making any assertions about what's up there. We're not permitted to go there. It's apparently way too expensive. So I'm definitely not making any assertions, but the standard rhetoric we are fed with little spoons when we are children is that there's a vacuum up there. That's the standard narrative, and you believe it. Understand that? I don't have to make any assertions about any models when there is already a model that is accepted by morons, namely you, Milo. Why isn't Milo here so I can shout at him in person?
Because he knows better.
Mark
Get your
Taylor's
ass on the
got quite a
panel,
lot to
Milo,
say
and
in
tell me
the
that we
chat.
need a
I think
model
he should
so I
come
can
in.
berate you.
Yeah, why don't you get your ass in here, Mark Taylor?
Oh, please, no.
Tell us about your astronomical abilities. Since you
Nothing
think
but
you're
keyboard
you're a-
warriors. Nothing but keyboard warriors and cowards.
Yeah, Gem Panda won't come in. None of them will. They used to at the start of the debates, if you remember, because they used to jump all on and take the entire panel over, if you remember.
Yep.
Snipers.
The day that the non sequitur, they had the debate with the limitless channel when they were going to present their model versus Red Rhetoric and Sean Hoffer defending their model and saying they got a working model, blah blah blah. After that show, I went to the Discord. I'm not going to dish anybody on the Gem Panda Discord show, so don't worry. I was arguing. I say the more I mean, I gotta be honest. I don't like the limitless channels, guys. They are pieces of shit, and that's my own process opinion, you know. But they presented something. They presented a model. They could have presented a pile of shit, but then Red Rhetoric and Sean Hoffer, they didn't present anything, and they were saying, oh, they didn't have to present anything of the globe model. They just wanted to give explanation on how it doesn't work or how it works. And then somebody in the chat, they presented me, this is the model, and a big name, you know, a big globe believer name that we all know, and they presented me a toy, a globe little plastic toy, and I was like, really, is that all you got? Yeah.
Can I just add to that in that hangout that you're talking about with Red's Rhetoric? And a week prior, Red's Rhetoric had brought a video out criticizing Jaren for quote mining and cherry picking sentences that basically he describes them as lying if you don't put the whole context of the sentence in when you're citing it, that as lying.
Yeah.
And it really is. I agree with him. It is lying. But in that hangout that you're talking about Globebusters, and he quoted that he said that even Bob admit by 15 degrees, and it was detected. The 15 degrees movement was detected by the gyroscopes. And whilst that bit is true, he didn't say the second part of the sentence that Bob cites, which is the thing that's detecting is the ether, the drag of the ether above us. So what he does is he says on the one hand, Bob admits that there's a 15 degrees rotation captured by the. He doesn't say the second part, which is Bob's position is that it's detecting the movement of the drag, the ether. That's what it's picking up, not the movement of any Earth. It proves that the Earth's not moving. But Red's basically, or he cherry picks and quote mines Bob. So he commits the very is Jerinoff quote mining, or otherwise known as lying. So it's just ridiculous how these people are just so double-faced and double standards. It's unreal.
Well, if there was a rotation of the Earth and there was some kind of turning, which I still am not sure if that's really real. Okay, if Bob says that, I have some trust in him. I don't trust him blindly, but yeah, if that were the case and there was a rotation of 15 degrees somehow, then yeah, that has nothing to do with the rotation of the Earth, because the position on the Earth, on the supposedly spinning ball, will matter a great deal for how the gyroscope will respond in accordance. So whatever this effect is, unless it is different on different positions on the Earth, it's not even relevant as far as I'm concerned. It can't match any rotating globe Earth.
I haven't seen any recent videos or hangouts with the globe believers presenting a working model of Earth. I really haven't seen that. They can explain it, they can talk about it, blah, 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 you know, derp, the way they say, but they haven't presented any. With pictures and videos of a working Earth model. The way they ask us, oh, but how about the sun and the moon and the stars, and how about this and that? They never present one like that. I want to see one.
But they can't. It's a Frankenstein model, and it rots at the seams. They can't make it fit. Can only show us that lovely image and CGI. That's what really works well. It's what works well on the imagination of the believers. But when you put all the physics together, when you put all the real life emulation elements of how physics and everything works and energy and everything, yeah, then it just falls apart. It just dies on the spot. So that's why they don't have a complete model for it.
And when they say, hey, show me your model of the flat Earth, I say, I don't have a model. I just live here. It's just flat, you know, period. They say, oh, well, then you're wrong. I got a working model. I say, let me see it. Show it to me. Let me have a little look, just how Nathan said. They don't present me nothing. They say, oh, you got nothing. You don't have a model. You got nothing. I say, okay.
Well, I got something, and my model would not die on the spot like that, because I was very careful to keep out impossible physics. There are elements to it, like the looping factor, that, yeah, they defy our sense of reality in that sense. But yeah, it's just a very simple presupposition that makes a lot of things work out physically. So I think that my rectangular looping model, as far as I've worked it out, is much more stable than the globe model by a long shot.
Jose, are you in Puerto Rico? Jose?
No, I'm in Florida, in Tampa Bay area, Florida. Yes.
Florida, okay. Yeah, so you don't need to explain anything about what happens in Tasmania. It's just whatever you observe wherever you live. Anything.
That's it.
Yeah, if somebody asks you a question about what happens in Tasmania, it's not your observation. So just let them drown in their model, and you just stick to what you observe.
I agree, and I tell them I've never been there. I don't have any plans to go there. If I hit the big lottery prize, I might go everywhere, you know. But as for right now, I haven't been there.
Yeah, and if I lived in Tasmania, I would just have to work out what I observe there, rather than having to try and work out any model that somebody else tells me this is what it is. Really? It's not what I observe.
Oh, double leg FPV's just asked me to look into cold race tire PSI and hot PSI. Yeah, I think they have a higher PSI when the tire's hot, and then the PSI drops on it when it's, you know, if it goes through water or something like that. So I don't know what that has to do with anything, but Can you guys think what he means by that?
Shout out for the super chat. Thank you very much. Flat Earth New Zealand.
Do you know what he's getting at with that? Hot PSI versus cold PSI?
What?
Yeah. I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy in the chat telling them that they're all cowards and where are the decent globe champions? Why is it being left to idiots?
It's just a variable whenever you're looking at PSI, what the temperature is, that's all. It has
to do with just the maximum and the minimum pressure, because there is, especially with air, there is turbulence. So it's going to be fluctuating slightly as the air flows freely around, while, for example, water is much more stable. So the pressure it exerts on everything is much more stable. Maybe that's what it's for.
Yeah, where are the globe champions? I remember a time not so long ago that you had Gem Panda coming in, Slice Barcane coming in, Mark Taylor coming in, Brenda coming in, en masse, bearing in mind, not just them guys, but there was a fair few others. I think Cigar Face used to come in. Where are they
to be fair, Ranty, Brenda can't come in whilst I'm in because I've got it blocked because she deleted all those videos and I just don't think that's acceptable.
Where have they all gone? Why don't they come in anymore?
Well, in Brenda's case, she can't.
Right, okay. However, there's still plenty others that can come in. Hi, Earth Flattener.
Hey, I wanted to suggest that maybe you start a GoFundMe so you could get yourself a good stand, a good mount for your camera so you don't have any problems like wobbly, you know.
Right, okay.
Well, I mean, I know you guys talked about it. You're like, it would be like £100 to buy a new one. So, I mean, if you're going to have the right camera, you need to have the right support for it. You know, it's just as important, if not more important.
I think he's saying get yourself a decent tripod.
Shout out to decent tripod, yeah. Well, to be fair, the GoFundMe is still accepting donations. So if anybody wants to donate to help towards get a tripod, feel free. Hello?
Breaking up a bit, Earth Flattener.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I think you should. That's all I wanted to say.
Perfect. Oh, and thank you for your donation too. Much appreciated.
Hey, you're welcome. You're welcome. It was an honor.
That might be an opportune moment for me to round out the show, so get my light on. With that, I will say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. And, of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience. Is that the right way around? All of the debating panel for making the debate possible and all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. If you hated the show, you know exactly what to do, but if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you have not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!